Chapter 1 of 16th-century Bristol. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Elaine Webb, Bristol, England. 16th-century Bristol by John Latimer. Chapter 1. Perhaps it may not be uninteresting to readers with some taste for local history to give a few facts from authentic records respecting the life and doings of Bristolians in the far-off days of Henry VIII. The most important of these records are the account books of the Corporation, which commence in 1531, but they can be supplemented and illustrated by various other contemporary documents, and some of the contrasts that can thus be made between the social customs of the 16th and of the 20th centuries may prove at least amusing, if not instructive. The transcendent circumstance which differentiates the Bristol which saw the accession of Henry from the city of to-day is the religious faith of the inhabitants. Roman Catholicism, at the former period, had reached the climax of its magnificence. It was the church both of the state and of the people, and there was not a whisper of dissent, for nonconformity was punishable with a cruel death. The young king was a fervent devotee and an amateur theologian, and his book against Luther gained for him from the Pope, in 1521, the proud title of Defender of the Faith. A very few years suffice to work revolutionary changes, but it may be worth while to endeavour to form an idea of what was really the local situation at the date that has just been named. The town, for it had not become a city, was extremely limited in area, and does not appear to have much increased in population during the previous 200 years, having in the meanwhile been frightfully ravaged by the Black Death and the Plague. It may be broadly described as being bounded by Dolphin Street and Temple Street on the east, the course of the Froom along Broadmead to St. Augustine's Back on the north and west, and the town wall between Redcliffe and Temple Gates on the south. Around all this boundary line were institutions independent of corporate jurisdiction. The royal castle, with its extensive fortified precincts, and the church and monastic buildings of the Black Friars, lay on the east. The priory of St. James and its adjoining farmlands covered a vast space on the north. The Grey Friary, the nunnery of St. Mary Magdalene, the hospital of St. Bartholomew, the Carmelite Friary, the hospital of the Gaunts, and the Abbey of St. Augustine, each enclosing wide areas round their respective churches and houses, entirely surrounded the north-western side of the borough, while the hospital of St. John the Baptist and the Augustine Friary, lying to the south, continued the circuit to Temple Fee, belonging to the military monks of St. John, who repudiated the civic jurisdiction claimed by the Corporation. There was thus no room for suburbs outside the walls, even if there had been a desire for them. But there is no evidence to show that the townsfolk felt any objection to the ecclesiastical circumvallation. Many of their wills attest rather than satisfaction at the multitude of their ghostly comforters. A few years later 7 of the monkish churches around the city had been swept away, and half of 2 others was demolished. But though there was a rush to get a share of the royal plunder, few additional dwellings were reared on the vacant sites until a much later date. Another peculiarity arising from the then national faith was the remarkable number of public holidays. A chronicler of the 15th century observed that in the agricultural districts the aggregate number of holidays accounted for 8 weeks in every year. The total can hardly have been so large
Sample complete. Ready to continue?